Everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. This is again your one and only Miss All or Nothing, only here in Miss All or Nothing TV. So for today's content, I'll be discussing to you, or I will be featuring the 9 elements of communication process, in which one and all of us should know and must know, because there are people even older than us who are not informed and did not realize that there are 9 elements that all of us should consider when we speak of day-to-day communication, engaging in communication process. That's why there are a lot of relationships that end up the bitter way, the salty way, because we or all of us are not informed that there are 9 elements of communication that we should need to consider when we speak of the real context of communication process. So for today, just find places in which you're comfortable while listening to this vlog that I'm making, because today I'll be discussing the 9 elements of communication process, which are very essential when we speak of attaining successful communication among our friends, among our neighbors, among our among our loved ones, especially towards our baby love. So today our lesson will tackle about 9 elements of communication. So without further ado, let us start the lesson. Now everyone, communication is divided into elements in which those elements that we must know will lead us to better understanding and better realization what really happens with the moment we will engage in communication process. So the very first element that you need to consider in engaging communication process is the element speaker. Now, how do you understand the element speaker? When we speak of element speaker, that refers to the element which is or who is the source of the message. Example, right now, syempre ako yung speaker, because I'm the one talking, I'm the one discussing, and right now my role as a speaker is very important in partaking among people that there are 9 elements that we should need to consider the moment we will engage in communication. So speaker could refer to either a person or a gadget in which one will listen to, so that a certain message or information will be relayed and will be understood later by the one listening to the speakers. Again, the very first element that we need to consider when we speak of communication process is the element speaker. Again, the element speaker, the source of the message or of the information. Second element that we need to consider when we speak of engaging in communication process is the element message. What do you mean by the element message? The element message refers to the ideas, the thoughts, or the information coming from the speaker, in which the message can be expressed either via verbal or non-verbal expression of communication. Example, right now I am the speaker, and the things or the topic that I'm discussing refers to the message. The message is the second element in communication, which is the message. In communicating, you have 2 ways to communicate. Either you can communicate verbally, or communicating with the use of words, and communicating non-verbally. Non-verbal communication refers to any bodily actions that or communication process that will not involve the use of words. That's non-verbal communication. Again, everyone, the second element involved in communication process is the element message, in which message refers to thoughts, ideas, or information coming from the speaker that is expressed either verbally or non-verbally. Third element involved in communication process is the element encoding. What do you mean by encoding? The process of converting the message into thoughts, actions, or ideas and other forms that the speaker understands. Why? Because encoding will ensure that the message sent towards the receiver is clear, direct, and concise. So, if encoding is done, high percentage of message misinterpretation is assured. Encoding is done basically by the speaker and not of the receiver. The fourth element involved in communication process is the element channel. Channel refers to the means or the gadget in which it can either be personal, non-personal, or verbal and non-verbal in which the encoded message is conveyed. Channel can either be a gadget, a technology, or a person carrying the message so that the message will be received by the receiver. Again, channel is the fourth element in communication process. The fifth element involved in communication process is the element decoding. What do you mean by decoding? Decoding refers to the interpretation of the received message by the receiver, and that message comes from the speaker. Again, decoding the interpretation of the received message. And decoding is basically done by the receiver. Meanwhile, encoding is done by the speaker. The sixth element in the communication process is the element receiver. What do you mean by the element receiver? Receiver refers to the recipient or the one that will receive the message and the one that will decode the message. What do you mean again by decoding? Decoding refers to the interpretation of the received message, and decoding is done basically by the receiver. Meanwhile, encoding is done by the speaker. The sixth element involved in communication process, the element receiver or the recipient of the message. The seventh element involved in communication process is the element feedback. Feedback refers to reactions or responses provided by the receiver right after receiving the message from the speaker. Feedbacking is done basically by the receiver. Feedbacking, receiver's responsibility. The eighth element involved in the communication process is the element context. What do you mean by the element context? Context refers to the place in which communication takes place, or simply the area where communication happens between the speaker and the receiver. The eighth element in the communication process, the element context. The last element involved in communication process is the element barrier. What do you mean by the element barrier? Barrier refers to the factors, may it be direct or indirect, personal or non-personal, and verbal or non-verbal, that will certainly affect the flow of communication. Barrier, factors that will affect the flow of communication, and barriers can either be personal, non-personal, verbal or non-verbal, and direct or indirect. That's it for today. Thank you so much for listening and for watching in this video covering the 9 elements of communication process. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe in my YouTube channel, Miss All or Nothing TV. Everyone, thank you for watching, and please stay tuned for the next vlog.